All right, let's get into the story of one of the internet's most controversial political figures, but specifically as he tells it. We're going to trace the path that took Nick Fuentes from what he describes as a mainstream young conservative to, well, a total pariah of the very movement he once wanted to join.
And we really have to start right here, with this secretly recorded clip from 2017. In Fuentes' telling, this moment was nothing short of a political attack, a setup by his opponents that would go on to define his public image and really catalyze his break from the conservative mainstream.
So the big question is, how did he get to that point? To really understand it, we have to rewind the clock and go all the way back to the beginning, to a political origin story that, honestly, might surprise you.
See, according to Fuentes himself, his political journey didn't start with extremism. Not at all. It actually began with a deep dive into some very mainstream conservative and libertarian ideas.
As a young teen, Fuentes says he was just devouring the works of free market economists like Thomas Sowell and Milton Friedman. He got swept up in the Ron Paul revolution, called himself a libertarian, and at the same time was consuming all this standard, staunchly pro-Israel conservative media. By all accounts, he was on a pretty conventional path. He even became a star debater and the head of his high school's Model UN team.
Then came the 2016 election, and this marked a huge ideological shift for him. This is where Fuentes says his libertarian ideals really started to give way to a completely new political framework.
What's interesting is he was initially a critic of Donald Trump, but he says he got red-pilled during the 2016 campaign. That's online slang for having a kind of radical awakening to a new political reality. For him, this meant two things became way more important than anything else. First, that you absolutely had to fight the media to win politically, and second, that securing the border was an existential issue, because he saw demographic change as permanently shifting the country to the left.
And this quote right here, it really illustrates his whole mindset. After he left his mostly white, Catholic suburb of Chicago and went to Boston University, he says he experienced this profound culture shock. He started to believe that the America he knew was literally disappearing, and this fear for his identity became a core part of his worldview.
So you can see where this is going. This new, nationalistic ideology put him on a direct collision course with the mainstream conservative movement that he had once looked up to.
Fuentes describes this really rapid series of events where he felt he was being systematically targeted and pushed out. It all started with a tweet where he criticized what he called Israel First conservatives. That got him a public smackdown from Ben Shapiro. Soon after that, he says his friends at the Daily Wire completely cut him off. Then he alleges they went behind his back and tried to get him fired from his job at a conservative media network. And the final blow, as he tells it, was when that secret recording was leaked and then blasted out by the very same figures he saw as his opponents.
Now, this is really interesting because it gets to the core of Fuentes' argument that he was the victim of a huge double standard. He points to this article from 2003 where Ben Shapiro publicly argued for what some have called ethnic cleansing, and he contrasts that with his own secretly recorded private comments. He uses this to argue that he was canceled not because of what he said, but because of who he was challenging.
So after all the fallout from the leaked video, his decision to attend the controversial Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville pretty much sealed the deal. His exile from the mainstream right was complete.
And this is how Fuentes started to frame his new role. He was no longer trying to fit in with the conservative establishment. Instead, he embraced this identity as the voice for a generation of disaffected, extremely online young men who felt totally alienated and ignored by modern politics.
The fallout was immediate. He got fired, was officially blacklisted from all the big conservative events, and was basically forced to go independent with his own show, America First. And from this new platform, he started to directly challenge figures like Charlie Kirk, positioning himself as this anti-establishment counterweight on the right.
So in the end, the story Fuentes tells about his own evolution leaves us with a pretty critical question. Is this the case of a young dissident being ruthlessly purged by an establishment just for asking the wrong questions? Or is it the story of a person whose own choices and rhetoric led them down a path of increasing radicalization? It's a question that really gets to the very heart of ideological purity and political control in our digital age.